All right, Katie, I'll go ahead and get us started if that's okay.
That sounds great.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Brian Ellis. I am the Disaster Recovery Coordinator for the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. We are here today. We're going to conduct a broadband planning workshop. We have our partners with DEO, the Department of Economic Opportunity, and we're excited to have you. The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, we are one of 10 regional planning councils in the state. We maintain a multitude of programs on the state level and the local level. We represent 6 counties in the Tampa Bay area, 3.4 million people, and we're just happy to have the opportunity to hold this workshop. So I introduce myself. CJ, would you mind introducing yourself?
Good morning. I'm the Director of Resiliency and Engagement, and very interested in the broadband issue as well and how it relates to emergency management and other issues. And I'm going to be Brian's co-host. I'll be keeping track of the chats and hand raising. So if you feel like you have something to say and you don't want to say it publicly, we encourage you to speak up through chat, but also post it to me, and then I can repost it anonymously or just say it from myself if you feel like you don't want to articulate it. But this is a very good and open opportunity for discussion, to share your perspective with DEO. So thank you for attending today.
As my colleague mentioned, discussion today is going to be very important. Hopefully everyone has something to bring to the table if you choose to. This meeting is being recorded, so video recording is being created. We're going to give that to Department of Economic Opportunity once that's completed. As mentioned, my colleague CJ will be monitoring the chat, so feel free to utilize that, and any questions or concerns, put them in, please. And I'd like to go over some Zoom tips because obviously we are using Zoom today. So with that said, thanks for joining. So please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you are dialing in, please mute and unmute yourself by dialing *6. If you have any technical difficulties, please respond in the chat box. We will do our best to address the issue. Today, we're going to be using an interactive polling software. It's called Poll Everywhere. It's going to be pretty neat because we're going to be able to, in real time, submit our answers to questions that you'll see in a little bit. You can use your web browser if you choose, or your text message from your cell phone. So it's going to be pretty neat. We'll go over that in a minute. All right, things to remember. You cannot be on 2 devices at once. This causes audio feedback. Please wait for the PowerPoint slides to load. Sometimes there's a lag. That's true. It's about a second long. Identify yourself each time you speak. That way we can keep track of who's saying what and make notes accordingly. Please use the chat box to ask any questions. And once again, CJ is going to be monitoring that for us today. With that said, I would like to turn over the presentation to my colleagues, Sean Lewis and Katie Smith from Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. So welcome and thank you for participating in Florida's broadband workshop today. These workshops are being hosted by the Department of Economic Opportunity in partnership with the Florida Regional Planning Councils. My name is Katie Smith, and I'm the Director for the Office of Community Partnerships and the Florida Office of Broadband at DEO. I will be your host today along with my colleague, Sean Lewis, who is a Community Program Manager in the Office of Community Partnerships at DEO. I want to thank our friends at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council for facilitating our workshop today and assisting DEO with invitations, technical assistance during the workshops, collecting information and comments to be included in the Florida Strategic Plan for Broadband. These comments are important for expanding broadband internet access in your region. And again, I'm Katie Smith, and I've been with DEO for about 6 years now and have worked in business development with large companies relocating and expanding in Florida, as well as economic development, assisting small and rural communities. I began to work in the Office of Broadband a little less than a year ago. Today, we're going to begin the conversation on broadband, focusing on accessibility, what the current status of broadband is in your region for your industry sector, and how you define broadband expansion. You are identified as a leader in the industry sector that you work in, and I'm looking forward to your discussion and our comments today. Next slide, please. During the 2020 legislative session, House Bill 969 established the Office of Broadband at DEO to increase the availability and effectiveness of broadband internet throughout the state, especially in small and rural communities. The bill also authorized federal access to federal grant dollars to assist communities with the expansion of broadband services. So the DEO now can do this, which is incredibly helpful. And we are currently staffed by existing resources in the Office of Community Partnerships at DEO. The Office of Broadband has been very fortunate to have the support and commitment of fantastic partners, such as the Florida Regional Councils Association, the Florida Association of Counties, the Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television, state agencies, from the Department of Transportation to the Department of Education and the Department of Health, and so many, many more. Next slide, please. So per statute 364.0135, the office has been provided 4 main directives, and these include creating a strategic plan to increase the use of broadband internet service in Florida, build and facilitate local technology planning teams with community leaders in education, healthcare, business, tourism, agriculture, and many more, and to encourage the use of the public use of internet service through broadband grant programs, and to monitor, participate in, and provide input on FCC proceedings. To meet this directive, go back a slide here, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. To meet the directives of the statute, DEO adopted a phased approach. And that first phase is the feasibility study to study and specify the nature of the connectivity gap and why it exists. In 2020, DEO submitted an application to the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration with a request for $3 million to fund this study. We were notified in the fall of 2020 that we were not going to be awarded any funding. However, with the help from our partners, the office has requested broadband studies, plans, and projects being completed in the regional, county, and community level to assist in identifying the current status of broadband. And all of that information will be a part of and included in the strategic plan for broadband. So our second phase is the strategic plan itself. And the office has begun an outline of what that plan will look like. And we are really looking forward to aggregating the information collected in these workshops and via the DEO website to include into our strategic plan for broadband. Technology planning teams gathered together in workshops that have been occurring over the last 3 weeks are from 13 industry sectors, and you guys provide vital information for our conversation, for our strategic plan, and the partnerships needed to expand broadband accessibility. The third phase is the implementation phase, and once we are able to start working on that strategic plan, we'll be able to identify other resources to assist us in that implementation. Okay, next slide, please. The Office of Broadband has created a website that houses information on federal and state funding opportunities, as well as information on the workshops and a link for the survey to a survey that the public will be able to provide their input on broadband expansion. One recent development you may have heard about is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, or the Rdof, from the FCC. That was $191 million that was awarded to Florida entities. And the FCC has provided a summary of the auction by county and the bidders within those counties. And you can access the link to those bidders on our website for more information. But it's important to note the DEO does not have a role in determining who gets what and how those funds can be utilized. Next slide, please. To prepare for possible grant funding in the future through DEO, priority will go to projects and proposals highlighting barriers, removing those barriers to entry for underserved and unserved areas, encouraging local and regional investment, and addressing many of the needs which have been exposed during the pandemic, such as remote working, telehealth, and distance learning. Finally, the Office of Broadband is continuously monitoring broadband development activities, and we participate in weekly meetings with national associations regarding various broadband topics. Next slide, please. You'll also find on the Office of Broadband website a map that highlights internet speeds by census block. The state of Florida minimum internet download speeds map uses FCC data, and since January of 2015, the FCC has defined broadband internet speeds greater than 25 megabits per second and upload speeds of 3 megabits per second. We chose to view this map and present the FCC data a little differently, because one of our office goals is to focus on the underserved and unserved areas. We chose to highlight the census blocks with minimum internet download speeds, so anything with 25.3 or less. The data from the map is provided by the FCC from June of 2019. It is for fixed internet service only. Satellite and mobile data are not included, but please feel free to log on to our website and take a look at it. It is really interesting, and that is that floridajobs.org/broadband link. Next slide, please. So on to the workshops. So today is the final workshop of our series, and it is being conducted with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. This is the 10th of the series, and all of them obviously will be completed today, and all of the information will be aggregated and included into our strategic plan and into a document that will go over to the legislature before session starts. So participating in the workshop today, you will see on your screen that there are about 13 different industry sectors that we have invited and are encouraging your comments and your feedback. So we really look forward to hearing from you. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'm going to kick it to CJ and let you guys talk about, and Brian, and talk about how the Poll Everywhere details work and how they can get logged on.
All right, excellent. So this is Brian Ellis from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. The following questions coming up will be asked through an interactive tool to help DEO collect and aggregate information and testimonies for the workshop participants. So we will be using Poll Everywhere software. There's two ways to use it. You can use your web browser using the first item here. So going to pollev.com/goldleaf599, and you put that in your web browser and be able to submit your answers. CJ has placed that in the chat.
Yeah, wait, I accidentally just copied something else in there, so that was quite the failure. Hold on, and don't go to that Broward County climate link. Let me type this in here.
There we go. I just submitted it, CJ.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep. So you can join via the web browser, or if you'd like and you're comfortable with it, you can text goldleaf599 to the number 22333. So I believe many people will be using their cell phone today to text their answers, and that's wonderful. That'll be great. These answers will show up in real time. When we get to it, you'll just type in the corresponding letter to your text message answer.
Thank you so much. You too.
Each question includes a list of responses with a corresponding alphabetical letter. Please only submit the letter that corresponds with the response. This will ensure an accurate responses. For meeting efficiency, participants are asked to submit a response within 3 to 5 minutes. This will allow plenty of time for discussion. And if you need more time, just let us know. So it should be pretty easy. Now, the next slide, I'm going to show you what the text message confirmation looks like. I did it myself. And so this is what the screenshot should look like. You text goldleaf599 to the number at the top left corner, 22333. You'll get a confirmation text message. And at this point, you're now ready to submit your answers. So we will go ahead with our first question. It's also a test question, and you'll see how the software performs. Oh, all right.
Hey, look at that. See, chocolate and vanilla. That is a very easy one, and chocolate always wins. But that's okay. Vanilla has actually been holding strong in the last few workshops, so that's good. Okay, so the following 8 questions will help direct the Florida Office of Broadband in understanding the regional availability and accessibility of broadband internet service. The questions will also assist in the design of state programs and resources for broadband adoption, deployment, expansion, and resiliency. The information shared today will be used in the development of the Florida Strategic Plan for Broadband. So, oh, look at that. Vanilla came through under pressure. All right, so let's go ahead and flip to our first question here. The very first 3 questions are housekeeping questions for DEO. We want to know which sector are you completing the survey for? So it helps us get a pulse on who's participating today and where you're from and what kind of conversation we might be having. Looks like we have a lot of local government, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for participating. I love that we're seeing tourism. We haven't seen a lot of tourism in our workshops, so that's.
Have any cash, but I'm pretty sure I don't have change.
So I appreciate you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And please be sure to mute your phones, your computers. Okay, so let's go to that next question. Oh, looks like we're still good. Okay, here we go. So I'm curious what county you are located in. And again, that helps DEO get a good pulse on what the representation is. And it looks like we have a lot of great representation for the Tampa Bay regions. Thank you so much. And then, yeah, a lot from Pinellas. That's great. Our the very last housekeeping question is, are you aware of any existing local broadband studies or plans for your area? Usually it is a very small number that know of or are aware of any plans that have been done or are being currently worked on for their area. So that's about in line. Okay, so if everybody's ready, and get to the meat of the workshop here. And that next question is, of the following factors, which is the most important to your community regarding broadband internet accessibility? And we want to know this because it's important to get a baseline. And why do you choose broadband? What is the most important factor here? A lot of times it has to do with cost. A lot of times it has to do with reliability. We've seen those two discussed a lot in the workshops. However, speed has become more and more of a factor that we have noticed. And a lot of these kind of go hand in hand. Is there anyone out that is participating that would like to comment on why one factor is more important than another for you? Don't forget to unmute.
Katie, this is Brian with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. I noticed in this polling, this particular question, that provider is not a factor with the participants on our webinar. With your other workshops, have you seen provider having any type of response? I would think it's important. Where I live in Pinellas County, I have 2 providers of internet service, 2 providers of broadband, and that's it. But I know depending on where I live, I might only have 1. Are you seeing, what are the trends you're seeing statewide?
That's a really great question. So we have seen provider come up. I think that provider has come up more in rural areas, those regions that have a lot more agriculture or farmland or just are rural in general. Those are the communities that we typically see the provider being a bigger factor.
It's the areas where there's low population density.
Yeah, low population density typically coincides with that. But that's what we've seen so far. And I know this area, there's some rural parts to these communities, but it's good that you have a lot of choices. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to that?
Katie, this is Phil Kirkpatrick with the City of Clearwater. I think that with more and more people getting online, speed is critically important, but one option that's not here is bandwidth. So multiple access points, the number of nodes, one of the things that's misleading for most folks on speed is you're getting a node speed, and depending on how many people are linked to that node, your bandwidth changes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Maybe Brad could speak to that. Brad Swanson, I'm calling you out today.
All right, well, I'm here, so happy to do it. Yeah, I mean, the amount of connectees to a node, I mean, certainly in many of the urban and fully developed counties like Pinellas, where they have 37 municipalities within it, two choices is a great thing for competition, but it ultimately does come down to how many people are on that final node. What we're seeing in the industry is we're seeing two-way duplexing being moved into our technology. So speed from the national conversation of where it's going, our hardwired industry is moving to a 10G, that's 10 gigabits up and down simultaneously. So those technologies are being rolled out across the nation. Now, obviously that's not everywhere in every footprint, but speed and bandwidth, those two issues, due to the technology that our industry has innovated, and then of course our friends where 5G is available in the technology space, that's another amazing, very fast technology. But those are typically being rolled out in urban areas for the high speed sort of stuff. But I won't speak for them. I'm sure they're on the call. So from that perspective, yeah, speed's always going to be a question, and in particular when you have higher densities. That's why when it's really high density, a hardwired connectivity, is cost effective for the private sector to provide, but it's also it's cost effective for the most robust speed technology and hardware to be deployed.
Thank you, Brad.
Katie, I have a follow-up question here, and it might be a little naive here, but are you aware of anywhere in the state of Florida any state-run providers, basically where there's such limited access that the state takes the initiative and provides any internet for a cost to a certain area?
I'm actually not aware of any. I don't believe there are any. None have come to the Office of Broadband at this point. I know that there are small municipalities that may have their small co-ops or such, but there are no state-run broadband services. But thanks, that's a good question. I have not had that question yet.
We've had stuff at the county level, like in.
So Sean Lewis is mentioning that there are items at the county level and providers at the county level, but not on the statewide level. Anyone else have any comments on their factors?
Katie, it's Stacy Briggs with T-Mobile. I was just going to talk a little bit about upgrades going on in the wireless industry, especially in the Tampa area. There's lots and lots of stories right now of how much all the wireless providers invested in the upgrades to make sure we had capacity for the Super Bowl. Of course, that's not necessarily a one-off. We are upgrading everywhere, as T-Mobile just merged with Sprint, as you know, and we are actually now the #2 mobile provider in the country, and we are having to build the network as part of our merger, but we are also, adding retail stores and adding all kinds of capacity on our network with our upgrades that aren't just limited to that 5G small cell technology that you might hear about. That's really millimeter wave, and that's for really high speed and to add capacity to maybe existing LTE networks. requires a smaller antenna in more urban areas, denser areas. And then we are also investing in 5G in rural areas by deploying 600 megahertz spectrum, and it's long haul spectrum. It goes 25 miles, broadcast quality spectrum. And then we have some mid-band spectrum in there. So you'll hear a lot about spectrum. And what Sprint brought to the table for T-Mobile was the mid-band spectrum. We call it the layer cake, but that is where your capacity comes from. So the spectrum game is every bit as important as the fiber game, just making sure you have the right mix in any given community and really promoting policies that would help us, not hinder us, I guess, from developing, the 5G and next generation. Is beneficial. The one thing we have talked about as an industry that since we're into what could help would be, fair taxing situation where this is a state where we actually pay on our investments as providers, and that's really not a competitive place when there's about, I think, 23 other states where we're treated like a manufacturer. So the inputs that go in are not taxed because the outputs are taxed. So there's no pyramiding of taxes. So anyway, we know that's a possibility and something we can all agree on as an industry, both the wired and wireline folks. So those are and anybody had any questions on wireless or T-Mobile, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Stacy. Always informative. I appreciate your participation and comments. Thank you. Let's flip over to the next question here. It's kind of a two-part question. So this is part one, and the next question will be the follow-up to this. I want to know what type of internet technology your industry sector is currently utilizing through your internet service provider. Yesterday, we saw a lot of fiber. Before that, there was definitely more fiber, but there was a lot of cellular and a lot of wireless. So we've seen different communities talk about having that satellite technology that they want to bring to their community. The next question is going to be what you would like to see in the future. So knowing that, is there anyone who would like to talk about the current technology that you're using for your industry sector?
Katie, I sure would. Here at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, I know, at least I strongly suspect we use a fiber system. Our whole building has Ethernet ports in the walls, so we're able to just plug into the walls, and then I imagine that travels via fiber out into the world. So here, that's how we're equipped, and it seems to be, in my opinion, flawless. I really don't have any issues unless it's with the internet service provider itself, or if we lose electricity, then we're on our own. I have not seen any other options come to the table that I'm aware of, but I'm really curious what can the future hold? I mean, in 10 years, are we going to be using fiber or something totally different? I'm very curious about how that will play out.
That's a really good question. And maybe our service providers can speak to that. I think it's the conversation typically from this point goes to that dual technology and multi-technology to expand a little bit farther. Is there someone who would like to speak to that?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Nault. I'm with PB Exchange, and we launched Tampa Bay Fiber about 4 years ago. And we are deploying right now 10 gig links from downtown Tampa into downtown Clearwater Beach. We've launched out in Newport Richey, Dade City. We're growing all the time, and we're doing really kind of virtual fiber links. It's the millimeter wave that Stacy referred to earlier. We're doing a lot with 5 gig connections to buildings. We're doing residential, in certain scenarios where we're dealing directly with either like an association or an ownership group, property management companies. And then we're running the fiber through the buildings, each to each residence or business office. So we're right in the game and, deploying weekly into new areas.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry, Rebecca, tell me who you were with?
I'm with PB Exchange. We are a Tampa Bay CLAC. We've been in business here 25 years, been doing voice for 15 now, and then the millimeter wave for about 4 years now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. That's great information. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
Yeah, I think just from our industry collective conversations with FDOT on MCORE. So for those that have more rural populations in their counties that are on this call, we recognize as an industry that it's going to take all the technologies to reach that last 5% of Floridians that sit in those rural unserved areas. And, as you said at the beginning, 25.3 is the FCC standard. But we're seeing other providers that provide to those areas with point-to-point fixed wireless systems, being able to get 100 gigs download speeds. So we recognize that while cable coaxial hybrid fiber networks, boy, that was a tough one to get out on Friday, are a great option for environments that are wired. For those environments that aren't, there are those other technologies. And obviously the low orbit satellites are all the rage to be discussed. Some of those are coming online for various areas. That's a big investment by Elon Musk. Those technologies, will be, viable probably, I'd say soon, depending on what your definition of soon is. But in the meantime, and I know my members and our friends in the wireless and in the wired phone space are helping to, wire schools and opening up their Wi-Fi hotspots during things like COVID and stuff like that. I know our members did that. And then of course we should have touched on it before, but we've got the low cost internet programs for $10 a month for families that qualify for the free and reduced lunch. So in higher density markets like Pinellas and Hillsborough and places like that, those programs are continually promoted by our member companies. Mostly, at least in the core of the corridor, will be Charter Spectrum, and then on the north and south borders, Comcast. So Charter Spectrum, excuse me. So we're doing what we can to connect those last few folks and folks that need help. But it's going to take everyone's technology that's on this call, at least from a provider standpoint, to connect those last folks.
I'd like to, this is Brian once again, Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. I'd like to just comment on what Brad said. Brad, I was unaware that there are any subsidized programs for people that qualify for such things. I had no idea that applied to broadband or internet. That is interesting.
Well, it's one of the really nice things about DEO and these calls, as well as our calls with on the FDOT calls. It's a program that's been around for 10 years and it's growing, and member companies will hire celebrities at the beginning of the school year to promote it. In Florida, it's handled 67 different ways based upon the school district. So each school district has a different method of promotion. While we, in our industry, chant it to the high heavens. There was a Super Bowl commercial about it from Spectrum. So we're advertising it, but adoption is a huge issue. And so while it's available when families are signing up for the program, they're focused on feeding their kids. And this program is typically listed after that with a few other programs that they are used by that schedule. But if anyone wants to get more information on it, I know we provided Katie a link to our link of all of our members, and I see Chris Bailey just put Charter Spectrum's Internet Assist link in the chat box. So for anyone that's interested, I would suggest going to that page based upon your region and looking, and we're happy to help connect you with the member companies that provide those. And I'd be remiss, because we're good partners, our friends at AT&T and I believe T-Mobile and those folks offer SNAP-based qualifications as well. And I know my members offer, beyond the FRL, certain qualifications for folks on other government assisted programs.
Thank you, Brad. And Brian, I have that list of programs that I can send to you after, and we can share those with everyone who's in attendance today. So
absolutely, that would be wonderful.
Sure. So let's go ahead to the next slide here, and let's talk about what internet technology would increase accessibility for those you serve. So we just spoke about what we currently have. We touched on where we want to go, but let's see what those responses are for where you want to go for your region, what you'd like to see. While these are going, while everyone is voting, I'd like to hear from maybe our tourism sector and how the internet has affected your industry, especially recently. Can you talk a little bit to that? I thought I saw that we had some tourism folks on there. Is there anyone who could speak to this, to their industry more specifically? If not tourism, maybe agriculture or local government might be able to speak to that. We've heard from a lot of libraries over the last few days, especially the last few days. I think the last few regions have had a lot of library representation, and it's been great to hear from them and how maybe, you know, and to Brad's point and his comments previously, you know, maybe they're not using the funds that they currently have for broadband because they're trying to use it for food or transportation in some way, but we are seeing we're hearing that they're seeing more engagement at the libraries themselves, looking for broadband access. So maybe someone could speak to that. Is there anyone from education that could speak to that? All right. So I do see that.
Hang on, Katie, I know Chris is on and I hate to put him on the spot, but I know Spectrum just worked with, I believe, the school district in their footprint. I want to say it was in Pinellas County on device provision and some other stuff. Chris, can you touch on that a little bit? If you're able to jump on, I didn't just totally blast you. All right, well, I'll have Chris share it with the group later.
Okay, that's
yeah. Sorry, I was double muted there. I think we have Albie Kaminsky here who works with us in Pinellas County and has a better relationship with there, so might have more information to share, whereas I would have for Hillsborough County and some of the others.
Okay.
If not, we can share all this later.
And Alison Barlow has just posted that they have a collaboration of people working on digital inclusion issues, and it's posted in there, so you'll see it, Digital St. Pete. And I wondered if you could elaborate on, you said a collaboration of folks. What sectors are included in the folks? Is it residents? Is it business?
It's
Allison?
everybody, CJ. Hi, everyone. This is Alison Barlow. I'm the executive director of the St. Pete Innovation District, which is one of the business districts in a public-private partnership in St. Pete. Last year, actually at the end of 2019, we formed a working group, and it includes the City of St. Pete, the Pinellas County School District, senior organizations, nonprofits, private industry, other business districts and neighbors, church leaders. And I put the website on there. You can go to our About page and you can see all of the organizations involved. But the idea was to start to tackle the various challenges that people in our community were having, not only with internet access, but also getting devices, having technical support and technical training. And Spectrum has worked with us. We actually added to the site the locations of the Spectrum free Wi-Fi in the community, as well as another provider in our community, GoZone. And we, somewhat related to what you're asking, we put a lot of attention on providing internet Wi-Fi access in the community outside of buildings during COVID. So we worked with our city and placed one in a parking lot of a city owned complex. We worked with a church and put it in their parking lot. We did it in our one of our business districts, and we also did it at 2 other kind of community-based organizations. And then the last thing we did was we stood up a tech house. I call it the Genius Bar. If you guys know the Genius Bar at the Apple Store, it's the Genius Bar in the neighborhood. And so we have a community tech house, and it's a one-stop shop for anybody who needs help. And it's the way that we distribute our recycled computers.
Allison, that is awesome.
Yeah.
That's
All
real.
volunteer led, great collaboration, and you guys can get more details, but you'll see on there how we try to tell people how they can get to the internet. So we give them information on how to get free internet, but then also paid options, including the Spectrum Internet Assist program.
Well, that is fantastic. Thank you so much, Allison. That was great information. I know that we will be on that site checking it out. I love the collaboration, so thank you so much.
So Katie, there was I'd like to see if Mary Helen Duke, who is the senior and long range planner for Pasco County, she had chatted to me that they're aware of issues on US 19 in Pasco County and in rural areas. Mary Helen, would you like to elaborate on what the issues are, who you've heard from, or what you've experienced?
Yes, we've heard complaints from the realty community and people who are associated with the West Pasco Board of Realtors who have complained that they have heard of some of the auto dealerships having some real issues in terms of, whenever they would try to do graphic programs, the speed was really, really low. It's hard for us to know whether or not that was an infrastructure issue within their building or whether it was a problem in terms of what was actually being delivered within the community by the service provider. So we have had those types of concerns expressed for the past several years along the US 19 corridor. We actually looked into at some samples of some county-owned provider situations to, we started some initial research. There's a group up in Minnesota that has done this. We weren't aware that there were other counties in Florida that have looked at providing their own service areas, but so the community has complained to us, but we don't know really the legitimacy of those concerns. It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. But thank you, Mary Helen. That's some really good information. Are there any other local governments that may be able to speak to this or what you've heard from your communities?
Well, I'll bring one up. This is CJ. I've heard this, and it's again, because it wasn't on my radar to collect this information, is the importance of internet accessibility. And I guess that would be really talking about number of nodes associated at shelters during hurricane. So it's a very, narrow, specific, high use situation where there's already potentially a lot of infrastructure challenges or damages, right? And so just reflecting on, my job is mostly focused on resilience, preparedness issues. And so I've heard this come up also living in Tampa, when the 4 years ago when the hurricane came through and how the power was out for 4 days. So our in-home internet service was not functioning for various reasons. And so until at the last point, so it came back. So I think there's just a question of accessibility under and strategies for support to special needs shelters, additional kinds of shelters. So some alignment of the DEO, this broadband initiative, to your community resilience initiatives for additional analyses or surveys of what's available, what are the backup plans. I know there's tons of emergency management plans for communications. I'm not saying there's not. You guys can probably talk all day about that. It's just, it came up as a point where we know, hundreds and hundreds of people can go into a shelter for a period of time, and what's the availability at those places, which may be schools or libraries. They're not used to that kind of capacity, generally speaking.
Yeah, I can if I can, Katie, and obviously you've heard all the things. I sit in the Emergency Management Center in Tallahassee when we go through that. One of the things that folks, while our members, like everything else with some of these programs, they advertise it, everybody doesn't know it, but our members will typically make their Wi-Fi hotspots available and open for free. I know our friends in the telecom space do the same thing. And obviously recovery and wiring those schools and having them, at capacity in those emergency scenarios is key. So I know our folks are very involved with folks like UCJ, and thank you for that. And but like, for example, when the hurricane came through the Panhandle and just wiped everything out, on every corner there was a Cox, Comcast, and Charter Spectrum truck with towers refloating a network and restoration. We did the same thing in the Keys. Our members did the same thing in the Keys, where they strung fiber literally on the freeway, bridge to bridge, as the bridges were being developed. So this is the kind of thing where we know it's a lifeline, just to tell members, just to tell family members you're alive and you're safe. So the challenge on power, to your point, CJ, is we have to wait until the power companies certify it safe before we can get in there. So there's always as minor of a delay as possible as we can make it. But if there's no power to the node, we can't energize the network. So it's worth knowing, but it's one of those little things that people, as soon as the power turns on, they're like, why isn't my internet working? Well, your power might be on at your house, but the node that powers your house might still be out of power. So it's one of those things that, our folks hunker down just like everybody else and get back out there as fast as it's safe to get back out there.
Thank you, Brad. And thank you, CJ. Those are really good points. And, you're bringing up the resiliency piece that we haven't really touched on in these workshops. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's important, and we have to have it, especially in Florida. So it's going to happen. It has happened. It's going to happen again. So we
right
to continue.
We don't like that.
Katie, in the chat, Mary Helen mentions that she has some experience with that in Pasco County. In their shelters, looks like special units are brought in. So this issue is certainly something that people are aware of and respond to. So that is interesting to me. And then looks like Miss Barlow mentioned they're looking, or they have looked at using PSTA buses with Wi-Fi for charging stations and connection spots for emergencies. That's very interesting to me as well. I mean, essentially it's a Wi-Fi hotspot from the bus to assist people during emergencies. I think that's how that would work. That's interesting to me that these thoughts are being had.
I think it's really creative, and I think it's really it's thinking outside the box. And what we're seeing in urban areas, how can we replicate that in more small and rural areas as well, so that those that are hard hit during those disasters have the ability, like Brad said, you got to reach out to your family, you've got to reach out and make sure everybody's okay, and to CJ's point as well. So thank you, Brian. That's a really good point. Anybody else have a comment on accessibility here before we move on to
Hi, Rebecca Nault again from PB Exchange. I had to get off my 15-year-old laptop and onto my cell phone. I just kind of wanted to speak again to COVID. Us being a small, business and local provider, we're not a national company. We wanted to help as well. And with us being a service provider, you would not believe how hard of a time we had trying to give service away. We wound up being able to provide service to one of the Tampa Housing Authority buildings, where we donated internet to 201 apartments. We're going to do it forever. It's an ongoing donation. And now we're starting to get some more attention and people understanding we're here, we're willing to help, we're willing to work with them. We can provide that super low cost internet, to downtown St. Pete, to Clearwater, to these places. So I'm just kind of curious, how can small providers, get more involved in the community? Like, what do we need to do to let people know we're here and that we are big supporters of our community and of our state, and we want to help?
That's a really good question. And yeah, I think it comes down to the obvious, marketing. But we can see how we can help in our office. I'm not sure how how we can make that happen, but we can definitely look into it. I'd like to chat with you after the call, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We're working with the city of Tampa, some now with Tampa Housing Authority, on some of their projects and things like that. And basically, we're going to be doing like a smart city for them for, some of the subsidized apartments and things like that. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you, send me an email and we'll set something up. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so let's, oh, I'm sorry, go please.
Katie, I just wanted to mention one other thing because we have a lot of money out there right now. You talked a little bit about the Rdof and because this community seems to be very engaged, just to take full advantage of all the CARES Act money that's coming in to the local level. And I don't know how you make people aware, but I know there's hotspot funding coming in. We work directly with the school districts to make sure those kids are connected with our program. That's Project 10 Million. But that's critical to making sure every one of those dollars, there's nothing sitting on the table. They just extended the deadline for the use of that round 1 CARES Act to the end of this year. So, and then there's going to be more and more and more. And I think the more engaged communities are in understanding what's available, there's a lot of money out there for different programs. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Stacy. And you're right, there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of money floating around, and how to use it, how to distribute. That is kind of a challenge right now, and trying to make sure that we can access everything that is available to us. Any other thoughts?
And it may be, there's a lot of things coming into me. So there's comments on the significance of rural area issues. And there was a question, how can counties effectively evaluate the service and accessibility issues in their own area? Will DEO be creating like a guidance, or is this a thing that they could ask for as a part of the Office of Broadband guidance on how to do this? So there's a multiple level of acknowledgement of issues in specific areas, and then questioning how to further evaluate what those causes and factors are. And is there a potential, I guess, a request for some guidance on that? How's the process to do that?
Sure. And, this is a great question, because this is something that the office is working on now. This is part of our strategic plan. And how do we evaluate that, or how, what is our capacity for that? And hopefully we'll be able to provide some more guidance in the very near future. But I don't have an answer right now. I think it's just important to continue the conversation and see where DEO can assist. But I'll be happy to have that conversation offline. I think that's a great thing to continue discussion on.
Katie, can I add something?
Sure.
So I know you mentioned it earlier, but it's kind of, when you're kind of walking through the FCC, it's a big entity. The folks on this call might find it interesting that 2 weeks ago, after about 1.5 years of figuring out a methodology to do a granular map of these counties. So one of the first big things that DEO has pointed out is that once the federal maps which are now funded, so they're going to begin mapping, they can see on a much more granular level where service is and where it isn't. So understanding the gap analysis for counties just from a geography standpoint will be a lot more transparent. Right now, the old methodology that the national maps use is a census block, meaning if one person is served in the census block, the entire block's considered served. And obviously we know that's a failed and old methodology. So thankfully under the previous administration and then the approval under this current administration, they've approved the funding to move forward with it. And this year will be the year that we remap America to see where we have it and where we don't. And I think DEO's plan is really looking forward, in my opinion, my humble opinion, to bring that into effect. Because if you're chasing the federal dollars, they're going to pay attention to their maps, and so it'll be good for everybody to also do that. I believe there's a hearing today on how they're going to roll that out. So.
Thank you, Brad. And to your point, I think that hearing is happening right now. But we are paying attention to that, and I appreciate you mentioning the more granular map that they're trying to come out with, because I think that will assist as well. We have to, we have to really look at everything that's available and try to figure out what's going to work for our communities. And I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to do a feasibility study that will help us identify that, and then also use the FCC map that's coming out in the future in conjunction with what we find in our feasibility study. So let's go to the next question. This is great conversation. I appreciate everybody's participation today. This question is, identify the greatest challenge or barrier concerning broadband internet in your region. I know that in very rural areas and some of the other communities that we've spoken with, it's definitely been a population density, which in turn is connected to maybe a lack of options, that they feel that they don't have the options. Maybe it's speed. What is it looking like for your area? Okay, so this is really interesting that if everybody kind of is sticking with the cost and the population density and the options. I think it's interesting that speed is not in that at all. Would anybody like to talk about why they chose one particular factor over another? I know everybody has an opinion on that.
Hi, this is Eileen Carey. I just like to share, I think cost is a really big barrier for our community, and the other things are kind of a moot point, because if you can't afford to have internet access in your home, then some other things don't really matter when it comes to that. So I think making sure we can have affordable internet is the key to be able to bridge this digital divide.
Thank you.
Katie, I would, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, this is Todd Dunn from Citrus County. And, we're pretty much built out where the people are. And typically it's the poorer people are in these rural areas and kind of spread out, and it just isn't profitable for internet service providers to get out there. So that's why I selected population density. The areas that are more dense are served, the ones that aren't can't even afford other options, and having a $10 a month discount plan doesn't help them if, we can't even get anything out to them.
Thank you for that.
I would like to piggyback off of what Todd said. We, in the Tampa Bay region, I have family members in Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, and myself as well. We definitely have access to, since we're so densely populated and built out, we have access to quality internet speeds, high internet speeds. And as I think it was Aileen mentioned, it's a moot point if the cost is not there. We have access to those higher speeds. However, the cost is much greater. So I would like to agree with what she said. And we're dense enough. We certainly have a lot of access in some of our counties in the Tampa Bay region, in the northern counties and maybe Manatee County. I'm not sure if that's the case though, but cost is certainly going to be an issue.
This is Mary Duke from Pasco County. I have some concerns as well that have been expressed by various people. Internet equity is a concern, in that we may only be seeing infrastructure upgrades in the higher income neighborhoods and not necessarily in the lower income neighborhoods. There's some concern that may be what our problem is along the US 19 corridor. Perhaps the providers have not upgraded the services there to the extent that they could. And what kind of incentives are there for them to do that, knowing that, that's serving a low income population. So that's a real concern.
Good morning. I'm Hilary Bruno with Pasco County Community Development, and I think it's important to recognize that there are different needs. We primarily serve low and moderate income households, so our income households are under 80% of the area median income for Pasco County. And you have two different populations. You've got the adult population that might be able to access their internet on their cell phone and I think many folks that we serve have that capacity to go online. And through that, they are able to apply for jobs and those sorts of things. But then you have the children and you have the folks that need the internet to do other things. And I think that's really important. I mean, sure, you can give somebody a phone with internet access and they can apply for a job and start moving forward. But what about the kids that might need the internet for homework and those sorts of things? So I don't know that it's just about accessing the internet. It's also having the tools to appropriately access the internet.
So you bring up a really good point, and we've talked about this in some of our other workshops. So thank you for bringing this up, because we've talked about accessibility as kind of a three-pronged approach. Is it accessible because I need to get to it? Is it accessible because I have access, but I need the speed? Or is it, I have the other two, but I need the device to get to it? And I think your comment kind of goes along on those lines, and we've heard a lot about that. And it's interesting which industry sector speaks to that, because the accessibility changes with what defining accessibility changes per industry sector. So thank you for bringing that up.
Katie, one thing I forgot to mention about that low-cost internet program for the kids on free and reduced lunch, that program, if the child qualifies, that the access is available to everybody in the household. So it really is one of those programs that goes well beyond just the kid using it. So to answer Ms. Bruno's point, at least for that program, for those that qualify, everybody in the household can use it, and we find that it benefits everybody.
And my son is a teacher at a Title I school in Pinellas County. I could tell you it's very effective.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have comments on this? This has been fantastic discussion. Any other thoughts or? Okay. Outside of everything that we have touched on today, are there any other comments that anybody would like to add, or any other issues that you would like to bring up while we are all on the line?
This is Mary Duke from Pasco County. What kind of tools can DEO provide local governments in terms of if they wanted to study what was going on within their community at a greater depth? You know, RFPs, RFQ samples. You know, many of us participating in this call are not experts in broadband internet. And so we need some of that guidance. You know, we need that technical guidance. And of course, we can go through our IT departments, and we will if we decide to pursue, you know, conducting further studies in our areas. But can the state provide any assistance with regards to that?
We can assist with some different programs that we have. I'll let Sean kind of elaborate on that.
Sure, and we're constantly adding tools to our website, specifically for these kinds of purposes. We want to make our website a one-stop shop for information on the how-tos, information on what's available in your area using our maps, information on grant opportunities, and our agency also has programs, as Katie was saying. We have programs that can be worked into local infrastructure projects. We really encourage our local governments around the state, when they're planning major road work, water, sewer, all those kinds of infrastructure projects, be thinking about the installation and implementation of broadband at that time. So they're digging once. That way they save quite a bit on their infrastructure costs. So short answer, we are building those tools for you on the website. I think it's a fantastic idea to present some some capacity in terms of what applications might look like. That's something for us to talk about and put together. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have any other thoughts or questions?
Hey, Katie, my name is Colleen Weaver. I'm with Pasco County. And I just wanted to emphasize the rural and the homebound issues that I've seen and heard, especially with COVID. Some people can't go out to those hot spots. You know, it's not possible. Those are great ways for the cities and the population densities and kids to get to libraries. But, you know, I watched my mom struggle trying to get a vaccine online, and her internet speed was so slow. She was panicking. I was literally having to be on the internet with her every morning trying to get her registered. And, you know, I ended up getting her and my stepfather registered, but she was never able to really access to even log in and get into the queues. So it was really, and it stressed her out. So not having that speed and not, you know, she lives in a beautiful home but she's out in the woods, you know, so it was really difficult. So it was tough watching her do that. And I've heard that even the county commissioner brought up parts of the East Pasco, same thing. People were struggling with getting internet speeds to be able to log on to get those vaccines. So that wasn't, you know, so it reinforced my thinking that, you know, it wasn't just happening to my mother, it's happening across the country with people that are in those rural communities. So how do we reach them? That's critical, because they're getting left out in the homebound. They're getting left out.
Well, that's a really good point.
That's actually part of why small and rural communities have really been highlighted by our leadership and the legislature as areas that really, really need that kind of attention. Colleen, I completely relate to exactly what you just said, because I have the very same situation in my own family. My mom lives in the Brandon area, and just like yours, she's been calling me, telling me that she's had the most difficult time trying to get registered for vaccines due to exactly what we're talking about here. So this is something that is right in front of us that we're working on and trying to make sure that in anything that we propose, that those areas really are given priority and attention so that they don't have to compete against rural areas at the same level.
All right. This is such good conversation. I love it. This is a great last workshop. So is there anything else that we need to talk about? Because I love hearing some of the stuff that you brought up. It has definitely been helpful, and it's brought to light some other issues that our office maybe didn't think of, or maybe didn't take that perspective. So thank you so much. Any other questions?
Hey, Katie, this is Valerie Pianto with Hernando County's Economic Development Office. And I'm sure you've experienced this, but just to kind of say it out loud, you know, it's a somewhat rural community as we go out and recruit businesses and they move into our tech center, and, you know, obviously they have services, all the infrastructure is in place, yet they want to move here maybe from the Northeast or somewhere in the Midwest for our rural feel, yet they still have that expectation of services for wherever they're going to build their home or move to. And it has been a challenge for us as they have an eye-opening experience of a $7,000 bill to have services, you know, some sort of internet brought to their home, or that their kids can't have the access that they're used to. So I think it's really important in our business recruitment efforts as well.
You're right, and we hear a lot more about that a lot more frequently. We do have projects that have, to Sean's point a little bit ago, that we do have projects that are infrastructure projects that have that communities have applied for, and they have that broadband component so that we can help get that into the infrastructure build out at that time. But it is a good point. We're hearing that more and more. Anyone else?
This is Mary Duke from Pasco County again. I know yesterday I received the survey that DO put out. And so I have forwarded it to a number of community groups, to the group that was complaining about the US 19 internet service, as well as our IT department head, and other key departments. And I think it's important for local governments, you know, this survey that you're conducting, from what I read, it could be sent to just about anybody so that you can get as broad of a representation as possible from the various communities. And so if you haven't done that in your community, I would encourage others to do.
Thank you so much. That is, they are essentially the same questions that we are asking our industry sector partners today and in all of the workshops, but we have tailored them for anyone to answer. So residential, you know, sector, public, anyone, because we need to hear from them, and we want to hear from you, and we want to hear what's happening in your community and what your community members are facing. So that will, yeah, please feel free to share, and it will be open till March 1st. And if we need to extend it, we'll be happy to do so. Is anything else?
These are great comments.
They're really great comments.
Katie, I think it's important for us to also, I know we've talked about discounted programs. I know Brad had mentioned it. We also offer access in our wireline territory for AT&T for Florida, but also for everyone that's involved in advocacy to keep a look at the federal level related to Lifeline, which subsidizes currently telephone service. That program is going to be reformed, and we're pushing to move that to have a focus on broadband to make the broadband cost experience that go down for those in underserved populations. So I think that's a good place for everyone to keep their eye on.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I'd like to go to our very last question here, and it is a big one. Would you like to opt into future communications with the Florida Office of Broadband? We really enjoyed hearing from you today. We enjoyed the conversation. There's some great information in the chat and some great comments. Looks like we had Representative Linda Cheney with us, so thank you so much for joining. And we appreciate your time. And with that, I just want to thank our DEO leadership for their support and guidance in the establishment of the office, the Regional Councils Association for volunteering their services and coordinating activities and consultations. We appreciate the regional planning councils themselves. Thank you, Tampa Bay. You've got a great group here and lots of great conversation, but we appreciate your assistance with the workshops and reaching out to these industries and assisting us. Thank you to the Florida Association of Counties, the Small Counties Coalition, Florida Internet and Television. Thank you, Brad. Your comments, again, I tell you all the time, I learned something. And internet service providers, we really appreciate your time and your comments and your participation in this. Thank you to all of the local governments. We really get a lot out of hearing from you. The disaster resiliency piece, the participation in the community stance, it's just great. So with that, I know that DEO's portion is done. Brian, is there anything else that we need to add?
I don't think so. This is fantastic information. I really appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you for representing Tampa Bay. And just thank you to everybody.
All right, well, share that survey, y'all. If you go to our website and share that survey, we would really like to hear from everyone. And please reach out to us at any time. You can see my contact information on the screen. So thank you so much. And with that, have a great weekend.
Thank you, Katie.